Several African companies, such as the South African telecoms giant MTN, have made it bigger in foreign markets than their own market. For example, Nigeria is a bigger market for MTN than South Africa is. This has raised several questions over the years, such as where should such companies' loyalty lie, in their home markets or the market bringing in the bacon? Right, in studio, of course, we are joined by our resident analyst, Clive Ramathibela-Smith of eNCA Investments, to help us unpack some of these trade-offs. As always, it's a great pleasure having you here with us, Clive. Now, let's kick off the conversation with MTN, a big player, obviously, in Africa. Recently, though, its name got thrown into this fracas diplomatic spat between South Africa and the Nigerian government. Let's talk about that, where, you know, companies sometimes have to suffer what's happening in politics.
It's very simple, and it's very sad at the same time, because what you're looking at is a situation where a South African business goes into Nigeria, which we're supposed to be very happy about and all excited about. I mean, the reason why it's bigger there than in South Africa is because if you look at just the number of population, then you'll realize that in actual fact, Nigeria is 3 times the size of South Africa in terms of numbers. So that makes it very automatically the number one. But besides that, the people that took this deal for MTN to Nigeria, handed sealed up, got the government involved, got all the relative. There was no infrastructure for networking and ICT in Nigeria at that time. So now Nigeria knew that they needed MTN to actually start rolling these things out. The problem is that because you're the starter, you're the beginner, you're the guy that starts this whole engine, then obviously everybody that comes afterwards cannot have the same share of the market that you would have because you have an advantage. It's the same what happened here. The reason why MTN is not as big as it should be in South Africa is because Vodacom was that way before they thought about starting their own company. So when Vodacom then started, because they had the advantage of the fact that they're a UK-based company, they understand the fundamentals of marketing in the mobile space, they took off most of the South African market, and their fees were much more competitive than those of MTN, who's a new player. So that's always the disadvantages and the advantages of new business. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't have very good relations between the two countries. The reason why is because later on, when Nigeria realizes that, wait a minute, this South African company has got so much more leverage and so much more advantage than anybody else. They can charge much cheaper than even the new companies in Nigeria who are trying to get into the same market. So what do you find then? You find some tensions, and the guys go to the government and they say, but this is our country. So now you have to understand where do we draw the lines, and that's what the problem is with MTN and the rest of the Nigerian market.
I know that you're very passionate about this, but for example, where it is like Nigeria is MTN's biggest market and still continues to grow, but MTN, of course, being a South African company, where should MTN's loyalty actually lie? I mean, if they're making more money in Nigeria, why should they be more loyal to South Africa?
The problem there is twofold. The first one is, what is longevity? Where does it lie? And the second one, obviously, is profitability. You know, those two are always the things that you ask yourself as an entrepreneur, as a business person. You want to know, where does my loyalty lie when it comes to profitability and longevity? Why do these go hand in hand? Because the longer the business goes into, it starts building into a certain market. Therefore, you must also calculate the profits that come with it. If the profits are good and the longevity look good, then why should you exit? Because your loyalty will always lie where you make the most of your bread. So if you're getting your bread buttered on both sides at one particular market, that's where you're going to be your focus point. But it doesn't mean that you have to leave where your grassroots are. So you always have to go back and look at what is happening in your own local home-based business. But I think, for example, this particular opportunity is a good lesson for African business as a whole, because it shows you that even as you grow, whether it be organically or by leaps and bounds, and you've actually exceeded your expectations, the fact that where your bread is buttered is where you will actually be more loyal than anywhere else. And it shouldn't hurt us because it's still in the African continent. So it is still home. So because of the scales, I've just showed you the differences in population. So that doesn't mean that MTN shouldn't be loyal to South Africa. MTN has done a lot of things in South Africa. But the problem we've got now is levels of scale. which one is more important? I don't think MTN wants to regard South Africa as not important because that's where they started their business.
Hashtag levels. There have been calls for your MTNs, your ShopRites, and your Dangotes of this continent to dual list. Do these companies have the obligation to do so? And if they have substantial market capital in a foreign market, would that be necessary for them to do so?
Let's start with the first question,
Yeah.
the first part of the question. The first part of the question, is it necessary for them to do so? The answer to that is it viable for the business to do so? What is the reason behind you making a dual listing or even starting, let's say, why you're listing in the first place? The reason why companies and business list is because they want to raise capital and they want to make grounds into markets that in actual fact they would not be able to do. So they're giving a public offering. That's what a listing is. It's a public offering to everybody so that they can participate in that particular market. So if you make a public offering in Nigeria, for example, on the NJE, so for example to say on the NSE, you're saying that you want the guys in Nigeria to participate in the shareholding within the business, not just in Nigeria, but in wherever MTN is. So is that a good thing or a bad thing? No. It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing because it gives opportunity for those people, that bigger market you're talking about, to also be included in participating in shareholding of this business that has done well in that particular country. So why do we stop that? We shouldn't be stopping that. We should encourage it because it will help other companies and other businesses. If you say they're going to list in London, then I'll be confused. I'll be like, what are you doing in London? Because you should be here, where you started your business, where your business is booming. So why do you want to go and go into the London Stock Exchange?
Clive, as we close, do you see increased competition on the continent, encouraging businesses to sort of expand outside their own markets, or do you see a clampdown really?
When business is spreading, when business expands, it gives opportunity for the entrepreneur to think more laterally, for the businessman to think about how to grow his business and how to be more competitive. So competition is very good. It raises eyes on things that you would not have probably have had before. You need to be ahead, be proactive and not reactive. I want to give you an example about a company called RIM. And I'm disappointed I still have a phone made by this particular company. But this business was slow to react to the change on the fast pace of what smartphones would come to be in the near future. And that failure has led them to their downfall. So South African business, Nigerian business, wherever in the African continent we have business, let's work together and let's make competition very heist so that everybody knows and realizes that if I don't check myself, if I don't do things the right way, I'll be left behind. That is very good for any business anywhere in the world.
All right, Clive, we're always so happy to have you. Thank you very much for that. That's Clive Ramathibela-Smith of eNCA Investments.